Yes, I'm gonna go fast with the news bits and then talk about what the most interesting part is. So Owl Venture, which is an edtech focused fund, one of the biggest, as it claims, got a 585 million pair of funds that it closed fully over Zoom during the pandemic. It's also invested in the most valuable edtech company in the world, Baiju's. So you can connect the dots there on why it's doing well. Course Hero, which is a profitable unicorn, became a unicorn a couple months ago, raised 10 million then raised an extension round, quote unquote, of 70 million. And then Juni Learning is a live tutoring startup that was coming up against some huge players. They closed a 10.5 million Series A by Forerunner Ventures, a consumer-focused fund, and have 10 million in ARR, compared to 2 million of ARR in March. Now, the thing I want to talk to you guys about too is like, we talk a lot about the edtech boom, but up until this point, it was very much like a boom from consumers, a boom from parents, kids, et cetera, et cetera. Now with schools reopening, we're seeing the boom and what some people are calling a second surge start from schools starting to invest in edtech platforms. That does not happen. People do not pitch to schools. It's the easiest way to die as an edtech startup. And so it's been cool to see the boom kind of transition from being solely consumer to actual B2B.
So yesterday I caught up with the CFO of Jamf, which is the Apple MDM company. And I was talking to her about the edtech market in particular. I'm like, what are you seeing? Is it explosive? And I think if I recall, I can't find my notes while we're recording, so it'll take too long. But the gist was that it's going to be a kind of a sustained thing because not all schools are starting at the same time. And given the delayed and kind of staggered rollout, demand that she sees, which is mostly software for Apple devices that are given to students so they can participate in remote learning, is going to be staggered. So I think when we discuss the boom, Natasha, it could have some long-term legs. And so I think this wave will persist for multiple quarters, which is enormous for the sector and probably part of why we're seeing such fast investments now to get ahead of those later higher valuations.
Definitely. I mean, I think a part of me, when I put my reporter hat on, which should be always, is I'm like, okay, what's the post-pandemic trend though? And I think a lot of people are, saying that it's not just these, like a lot of, I mean, I'm sure there's hype in edtech. There's definitely hype in edtech. But for example, like VR labs for science class, I was talking to Owl Ventures and they were like, it doesn't have to be scientific to get investment interest from us now. Like that is still interesting to us, but we're also still interested in the, Q&A services like Quizlet. If Quizlet was pitched to us now, we'd still be interested in it. And hearing that kind of balance and that it's not just only, VR being applied to education as the next wave of edtech startups also gave me more faith in like what a post-pandemic edtech space looks like.
Looking at this set of news that you brought up, the thing that really exploded in my head more than anything was the size of the Course Hero extension from a $10 million Series B to an $80 million Series B, which is, I don't think anything I've ever seen before. Extensions tend to be, equally sized to the preceding tranche at most, right? So this was an insane thing. That implies to me that investors are, excited about this company and what it's doing. So it implies such a demand surge that I don't think even when it does abate post-COVID, as you were discussing, it's going to go down to zero. I think we're at a new higher plateau or higher plane of growth for these companies. Because a bit like how I don't think conferences are ever going to go back to exactly what they were. I think there'll always now be a hybrid digital element to global tech conferences or pharmaceutical, whatever it is, given that we now have the tech experience and know-how to do that. I think education is going to be very similar. There's going to be more of a remote component to it that lets it be more accessible to more people. And that means higher demand for this stuff net long-term, even if the growth rate descends to a more historically normal level, I think.
Right. With Course Hero, for example, it's, total addressable market. They thought it was 1 million students. Now the CEO says it's millions of, like more than millions, right? And so I think they're starting to realize, to your point, Alex, that it's much bigger than even they thought.
Yeah, I mean, when your TAM triples, that unlocks some venture capital opportunities for you. Danny, if you're a VC, right, and the company that you're investing in all of a sudden thinks their TAM goes up by a factor of 3, you would want to give them money ASAP so they can go and spend it on S&M and go after that increased market, right?
Maybe. I mean, to me, I'm very excited here, right? I think that the coronavirus pandemic has scrambled the entire education market, right? Everything from individual tutors, which is what we were talking about with the last company, to the infrastructure that actually empowers classes, to the fact that a lot of folks are moving online from offline. All that is really positive from a technology perspective. I think the question is ultimately, where are these budgets going to come from? We're talking a little bit about this transition to B2B. Well, school districts have no money because taxes are way down. Universities are being, are crippled from state, budgets. Foreign students not paying full fees, tuition's going down. So I think a huge amount of it is still focused on consumers. I think that a lot of these technologies are going to end up substituting for existing kind of infrastructure. And so I see a lot of cannibalization. Rafat Ali, who was talking about events and kind of the collapse of the events business, brought back this quote from 20 years ago about how, analog dollars become digital pennies. And I think we're going to see something very similar in the education space where, the $100,000 tuition and cost of living to go to a business school, let's say for an MBA annually, is going to be replaced by a $1,500 course online that's roughly equivalent. And that to me is going to be the magic in the next couple of years. And there's going to be real winners and losers. So I think the TAM is definitely increasing. I would buy into that. If I was an early stage investor, I would be just counting my laurels. This looks like a huge win. You got some wind in the sails in the later years of a company. If you're investing now, that's trickier to me, right? Because there's a ton of companies already on the map, dozens that are already years in. You have a bunch of new ones coming on. I'd be more careful at the seed and A.
This is why Danny famously gave up VC to become a long-term value investor on the stock market. That level of caution. I want to, before we move on to other funding rounds, because there's a lot more to get to, I want to point out that I was initially terrified when Danny said, traditional dollars become digital pennies, or whatever that quote was. And then I realized
analog dollars become digital pennies.
I was so close to getting that right, and yet so wrong. I want to point out how I was initially terrified. I'm like, oh, that means revenue will be smaller. But then I realized the opportunity that unlocks. I have not gone to business school because the opportunity cost of not working for 2 years plus the cost of business school made the math look really crappy. Just I would have to have a 50% income jump, and I want to stay in my profession, so it's not going to happen. So I never went. But if it was take 3 months off, pay $5,000, do it online or whatever it is, and just spend all my time doing that, I would definitely do that. Just take a leave of absence and go do and get an MBA if it was cheaper, right? And therefore more cost effective. So I think there's a cool silver lining to this in terms of access.
And the flattening and the access is not just for the US, right? It goes internationally, so people around the world can take the exact same classes that you could in Boston or New York. So or vice versa. So to me, there's this huge globalization that's going to kick in, huge flattening, affordability is coming back. I mean, it's amazing to see in education.
And any stigma that there maybe would have been with online credentials or online degrees is effectively gone now, because everything is an online degree.
Yeah. Also, I read a really great thread today about how parents of kids in elementary school are watching their children learn on Zoom, or as it were, not learn on Zoom. Probably the funniest thread on Twitter I've read in some time. All right. But we're going to put a stop to this. I'm sure Edtech will be back next week because Edtech is the new SaaS, apparently, and we can't get away from it.